Chapter 1 of Cowards and Young Boys. Mayo, Calo. Canella may have been Akea's capital and where the palace of Emperor Storm was situated, but there were other villages within the province. I am from Tirona village, which was on the outskirts of the palace grounds. Kino's, however, was Wawang, which was so far from the school that I hated it when he did not show up for class, because as his friend, I felt like it was my responsibility to drop by his cottage after school to tell him what happened in class. Nothing was noteworthy today, save for Professor Leban's class. Everyone was looking forward to it because, in the next 5 days, the moons would have completed their turns, and my classmates and I would go to the Canellan Palace to present our powers. I still did not know how to display my power so that the Emperor would easily understand how it works and not ask too many questions about it. I wanted to get this over with. Removing harmful components from food, I was sure the palace would not have much need for this power, but I did not want my classmates and the rest of the world to think that I had useless skills. I tried not to dwell on it, though, because right now, all that mattered was for me to be included in the list of Akene citizens. Once my name was registered in the Akene books, it would prove that I am already a citizen, and only then and when I reach my full age would I be able to enlist as a palace soldier. Whenever I felt bad about my power, I knew that this would sound mean. I thought about Kino to make myself feel better. For some reason, he did not have any power. Now, that was inexplicable. I mean, some Akenes have feeble powers, but the point is, they still have power. With Kino, it was as though there was not even a spark, to begin with. And all these plans of ours to make Kino fly was just an excuse to set aside the fact that he had no power. It gave us hope. At some point, we knew we would have to give it up. Not anytime soon, though, because I was still pushing Kino to make an attempt. Else, there would be no one beside me when I present my power to the Emperor. And the school bullies are more than I could handle. I touched my belly and squeezed the unwanted fat. This would have to go, and soon too. A palace soldier is supposed to be agile, so I have to be leaner than this. Come on, Brew, I said. I can almost see Kino's cottage. Brew's tail wagged as he trudged beside me. Kino and his mother's cottage were quite small, and Kino told me that the walls become slippery to the touch during winter. Why, even the floors become slippery. I told him to build a hearth to keep them warm, but he ignored my suggestion every time I told him. During other seasons though, like summer, I envied their cottage because the air passed through every wall as though the cottage itself was breathing. Regardless, the house was kept spotless inside. I did not know where Kino got his looks, though. He does not look anything like his mom, except for his curly brown hair. His green eyes, full lips, and dimpled chin perhaps were from his father. The gap between his teeth was something I was sure Kino did not inherit from his mother because she is perfect. I knocked several times, drumming my fists rhythmically against the door. I paused and listened. Kino? I knocked again. When nobody answered, I turned the doorknob and let myself in. He would not have minded. I do this all the time. Inside the cottage, I noticed that there were pieces of broken glass on the floor, and the lamp was lying on its side. The oil in it had spilled and started running on the floorboards. I took extra care not to slip on it as I walked over deeper into the cottage. What happened here? Kino? I whispered as I strolled around. If a burglar had entered and he was still inside, I had best be careful. My heart started to beat loudly, obscuring any other sound. My ears started buzzing because of all the tension I felt. To my right, there was some shuffling, and I immediately faced it, fists raised to defend myself from whatever it was. The sound stopped, and I relaxed. Then 2 figures started forming in the air. Arg! I yelled. Quiet, Mayo, Piper said. Why did you have to scare me like that? I asked, my voice trembling. Piper shrugged. We're not trying to scare you. We're hiding. Kino moved closer. My mom's gone. She's been taken. For days, she had been worried and said she wanted to run away from Canella. I don't know why. I offered to help, but I wasn't able to tell her of my plans. His voice trailed off. Piper and I were looking at him intently. Piper turned to me. He said that his mother kept having nightmares about the palace and her job. Nightmares about writing? Now, that was odd. Do you have any clue why she'd have nightmares? I asked. Kino sat down on one of the stools in the living room, his green eyes squinting. No. And I don't know who took her. But we had an agreement. If anything happens, this house is where we'll meet. That's why I'm hiding here. It's been a day, and she hasn't shown up. He sounded worried, and I would have been too if my mom had gone missing. Do you think that maybe she's dead? I asked. Piper's blue eyes widened at me before I felt her foot on my shin. Ouch. What? I asked innocently. Kino looked even more worried now. I try not to think about that, but I don't think she is. There's no blood, and the only sign of struggle is this broken lamp, he said. My mother may be a small woman, but she's brilliant. She will not be taken easily. When I realized what I had said, I felt ashamed for asking him. Of course, I should have been more sensitive. I did not want Kino to worry so much. What brings you here? Kino asked. Piper sat opposite him. I glanced at her and cringed when I saw her gray skin. It was an unsettling reminder that she acted like a ghost. You didn't attend Professor Levin's class today, I said. I don't need to. I don't have anything to practice with, and I won't be presenting in the palace anyway, Kino said heatedly. Why was he so angry with me? What did I do? But it's only 5 more days before the Akea Wine Festival, and you have to be there. No, I don't, Kino said, shaking his head sadly. I do not know which I prefer now, the sad Kino or the angry Kino. But we are so close to flying. Mom had been sour at me for the attempts that we had, which by the way, caused me to limp. Now that the limp is gone, maybe I should take another shot at flying, and who knows, if I get lucky, I'll only break my wrist this time. But Piper's here, don't you see? We can reach the Naramisra tree now. Come on. You can't give up, not now. We need to attend the Akea Wine Festival together. Piper looked confused. What are you two talking about? The Akea Wine Festival, aren't you listening? I asked, annoyed. Piper's never attended it, Mayo. They never leave the ghost town, Kino defended. Oh, I said. It's where we present our powers to the palace. It's a custom as old as time itself, or so the elders say. It's like we age like wine, developing our powers, and when we're ready, we are presented to the emperor so he can give us his blessings. Our names will also be included in the list of Akea citizens. That's what we're all waiting for, to see that day. I gushed and felt ashamed again because of Kino and his lack of power. I went on, it's brilliant, you know. At first, I wondered how the palace could control the people. I mean, possessing power was one thing, but how can anybody ever be sure that it will be used for the common good, right? The Akea books solve the issue. As long as everybody is listed, it assures that citizens will refrain from committing a crime because the palace will know who has the ability to execute the crime. I grinned, proud of myself for giving a crystal clear explanation of how it works. A soldier should be well versed with the palace history, you see. But it doesn't exactly point to the specific person who could have committed the crime, does it? Piper began. That's what the soldiers are for. I'm not finished, I said, obviously irritated. But you already stopped talking. Only because you butt in while I was still talking, I said, waving my arms. You're finished talking. You were grinning. Piper argued. Mayo, you're grinning like Professor Levin after one of his lectures. And Piper, there are other things that Mayo wasn't able to say about the festival, the books, everything because it will take forever to spell them out, he paused. I murmured in agreement. All right. I get it, Piper said, nodding her head. But let's go back to flying. I want to know more about that, instead of the long lecture that Mayo gave, she said with a hint of amusement in her voice. I frowned at her to show her that I was not amused by her making fun of me. We sort of had this stupid plan, Kino began before I cut him off. It wasn't stupid, I argued. It wasn't before, but now, I'm not so sure, he said, his voice trailing off again. We became silent after that. Maybe in a way, it was a stupid plan. Piper nodded as though in deep thought. She turned to Kino. Are you going to this festival? She asked Kino, and I froze. Kino looked at her as though he was unaffected by her question, but I knew that he was trying to cover up the hurt inside. He shook his head slowly. I'm not going. I haven't attended the festival for 3 moon turns since I realized that my power wouldn't manifest. I sat down, my weight thumping against a stool. You have to be there. You're my best friend, I insisted. Don't be ridiculous, Mayo. Everyone will laugh at me if they see me there, he paused. Being laughed at is one thing, but if anybody so much as looks at me with pity, I'll lose it. I can't go, Kino said. I blushed and looked down with regret. Oh no, what did you do? Kino asked and stood up. Look at me, he ordered. I twisted in my seat. It wasn't exactly me who started it, I said, sweat forming on my forehead. Then what? Tell me. Kino shouted. Piper stood up, too. Lima started it. He said that you discovered what your power is. Kino's eyes popped. What? Then, Conrad seconded. He said that you could move objects with distantecus. But that's not true, Kino protested. I gulped. I know. But the whole class turned towards me and wanted confirmation. Conrad's and Lima's gazes were menacing, like they would punch me if I didn't back up what they said, so I nodded. Kino covered his face with his hands. Piper was shocked too, and if I heard her right, I think she cursed. I can tell Professor Levin that it vanished, that I can't make it work anymore, Kino said. That will put an end to all this nonsense, he finished desperately. You can't. I bellowed in panic. I most certainly can. I don't want to keep pretending, he said stubbornly. But if you tell Professor Levin that, Conrad and Lima would look like liars, and they're going to beat me up, I reasoned. You did lie, he pointed out. They would gang up on me. Please, Kino, go with it, I begged. What about me? I have to tell the truth. I can't go to the festival and face Lima and Conrad's mockery. Besides, I could receive bad marks for lying, and I might be sent home, forever, Kino said worriedly. That's not true, I disagreed, my voice growing weaker because of my uncertainty. It is. The school will send me home, and Mother will be less proud of me if that happens. I have to tell the truth, Kino said. I was frowning as I watched Kino's face. I wished he would not divulge everything to Professor Levin so rashly. No. Piper exclaimed. Kino and I looked at her. I can come with you. The bullying has to stop, Kino. If they think you have power, you'll be free from bullies. Nobody knows me. All we have to do is repeat the performance in the forest. Only this time, it will be better, she said excitedly. Kino opened his mouth to protest, but I got there first. Come on, Kino. We can pull this off. I need you at the festival. Piper's right. The bullying has got to stop. Piper and Kino were staring into each other's eyes. I don't know. What if we're found out? Kino asked. Piper's eyes beamed even in the darkness. We won't be, she said reassuringly. I grinned at Piper, happy that she was on my side. But, Kino started to protest. Come on. You'll be leaving with your mother anyway. What's going to happen at the festival won't matter anymore because you'll be in hiding soon, I said, grinning. Piper rolled her eyes at me. You could really be so insensitive. You talk faster than you can think. I stared at her, dumbfounded. What? Uck. She sighed under her breath. Just know when to be quiet. Think about it, Kino. Once you and your mother go away, you'll be leaving everybody, especially the bullies, something to think about. I gushed. You keep on referring to hiding like it's a good thing, Kino said. That was the moment I blushed, again. All right, Kino finally said. His voice was still slightly hesitant, but I was glad I finally convinced him. Great, I said, grinning again. It's only for a few moments. Don't worry. Nobody will know. There will be hundreds, thousands even, of children presenting, and I'm sure nobody would pay us any mind. Here. I pulled a piece of paper from my pocket and handed it to him. This is how we're to present ourselves. A short demonstration of the power and then an introduction of who you are and which village you're from. Kino took the piece of paper from my hand and read it. Piper tiptoed and peeked to read it too. It's easy, she said. But what are we going to do about your mother? I asked. Kino's worries came back, his eyes clouded. I'll wait here, he said. Piper squeezed his hand. I'll have to go for now. My father will be looking for me. But I'll see you tomorrow, she said, and just like that, her whole body disappeared. She had such incredible power. Just when I thought she had left already, she whispered near my ear, "Bye, Mayo." I jumped from my seat. Quit it, Piper, I shouted, frowning at being startled. That was nasty of her, and I continued to frown her way, unaware of where to turn my face so she would see my menacing glare. I presumed she had walked away because the sound of her giggles gradually softened. The door opened and closed behind it ever so slightly. Only then did I assume she had left the cottage. Kino looked at me. In 5 days, we'll have to leave with or without my mother. We'll go to the palace, he said. I hope she won't come to the palace. I don't want her to see all of this, he trailed off, and his face went pale. Why? I asked. What's wrong? I just remembered, in 5 days, my mother will be returning to the palace to give the scroll. I hope we don't bump into her, Kino said. But why? Wouldn't that be nice? I asked. She doesn't like taking me to the palace, Kino said. But it's her chance to be proud of your power. She knows I have none. She's my mother. She will know it's a sham. Kino looked sullen, but I was beaming inside. I wanted Mistress Lamare to be there to witness Kino's presentation. My father would be in the palace too, unless he had been sent away on some mission again. My mother might be in the palace too, but I doubt my parents would be proud of me with my useless power. At least, if Mistress Lamare were there, she could be proud of Kino and me. It's good enough to hope for,